She stood up in front of hundreds, her voice shaking but her eyes locked on one man, and then she screamed, "Stop the wedding, that handkerchief is poisoned." Asterisk asterisk, in that single moment, everything shattered, the music stopped, the bride froze, and the billionaire groom reached into his pocket, holding the very thing that was meant to kill him. But why would a father poison his own daughter's wedding? Why did no one else see it coming? And how did a 17-year-old girl become the only one brave enough to stop it? What began as a perfect celebration turned into a life or death revelation. And the truth will leave you speechless. This is not just a wedding story. This is a story about betrayal, legacy, power, and one voice that refused to stay silent. Don't blink, because every second of this story leads to a moment you'll never forget. They said it would be the wedding of the year. A beautiful estate, white roses blooming under a golden sun, and a guest list filled with powerful names. But no one expected the moment when everything would fall apart. Not the bride, not the guests, and definitely not the tycoon standing at the altar, because what began as a perfect celebration would soon become a nightmare they'd never forget. But before we get there, you need to know the girl who screamed, the one whose voice stopped the music, the one who dared to speak when everyone else stayed silent. Her name was Amara, 17, bright eyes, sharp mind, stronger heart. She was the bride's younger sister, and the only one who noticed something no one else did. Amara never trusted her father, not because she didn't want to, but because he never gave her a reason to. He wasn't the kind of man who hugged his daughters. He was the kind who hugged power, money, status, appearances, and this wedding was his final masterpiece. His eldest daughter, Celeste, marrying one of the richest men in the state, a tycoon known for building empires but blind to the empire of lies he was walking into. From the outside, everything looked perfect. The venue, breathtaking, the music, soft and angelic, the bride, glowing like a sunrise, but beneath the surface, there was something darker brewing. Amara felt it. In the way her father's hands trembled when no one was watching. In the way he clutched that handkerchief in his pocket like it held a secret. In the way he whispered on the phone the night before the wedding, thinking everyone else was asleep. But Amara wasn't asleep. She was listening, and what she heard chilled her to the bone. Everything's in place. Her father said quietly, he won't make it past the vows. Once he uses it, it's done. At first, she didn't want to believe it. Maybe she misunderstood. Maybe it was stress. Maybe she was being paranoid. But the next morning, as sunlight poured through the stained glass windows, she saw her father again, and in his hand, the same handkerchief. Plain white but folded too precisely, held too tightly, almost like it was more than just cloth. And then came the final sign just moments before the ceremony began. Amara saw her father walking toward the groom, and she watched as he gently tucked the handkerchief into the groom's inside pocket. "Keep it with you," he said. "You'll need it later." That was all she needed to hear. Something inside Amara snapped. Not in fear, but in purpose. She didn't know what was inside that handkerchief, but she knew it wasn't right. And if she stayed silent, she'd never forgive herself. So as the music started, as the bride stepped into the aisle, as the guests rose to their feet, Amara didn't move. She didn't clap, she didn't smile. She looked at her father, then at the groom, and then she screamed, "Stop." The words sliced through the air like lightning. Every eye turned toward her. Gasps rippled through the crowd. "Dad, don't let him use that handkerchief. It's poisoned." Silence. Total, suffocating silence. The music stopped. The bride froze mid-step, and the tycoon slowly reached into his pocket. He pulled out the folded cloth, looked at it, then looked at the man who gave it to him. Amara's father, standing still, expression blank, but his eyes gave it all away. Panic, shock caught. The tycoon stepped back, 1 foot. Then 2, his voice low but firm. "Is this true?" he asked. "Is this what I think it is?" No one answered, and then the bride broke down. Celeste turned to her father, tears flooding her eyes. "Why?" she whispered. "Why would you do this?" He didn't speak, because he didn't have to. The truth was already unraveling. In seconds, the wedding collapsed. The groom stormed out, The bride collapsed to the floor. Guests rushed toward exits in chaos. And Amara, still standing, held her ground. She didn't ruin the wedding. She saved a life, but this was only the beginning, because what Amara didn't know yet was why her father wanted the tycoon gone. And just how deep the betrayal really ran. She stood there, Amara, still trembling but unshaken, because in one scream she didn't just stop a wedding. She shattered a mask her family had worn for years. But what no one understood yet was that this wedding wasn't just about love, it was about control. It was about legacy. It was about secrets buried so deep, no one dared to dig them up, until now. The tycoon, Nathaniel West, wasn't just a powerful man. He was the key to a future Amara's father couldn't manipulate. A man too strong to bend, and too smart to be tricked, unless he was taken out. And now, with everything exposed, Nathaniel wanted answers. He stormed out of the chapel, handkerchief still in hand, his security team surrounding him, but he wasn't running, he was calculating. Every step he took was heavy with realization. Someone just tried to kill him at his own wedding. And the man behind it, his would-be father-in-law. Back inside, chaos had turned into silence. Celeste, the bride, was sitting on the edge of the altar steps, her wedding dress crumpled like her heart. She wasn't crying for the groom, she was crying for the lie. Her father stood alone, the crowd avoiding him like poison itself. He didn't deny anything, didn't protest, didn't shout, because the silence was safer than the truth. And in that silence, Amara walked toward him. For years, she had swallowed her voice, taught to respect, taught to obey, taught to stay quiet, even when everything felt wrong, but not today. She looked him straight in the eyes. What was in it? She asked. What would have happened if he used it? He said nothing, but his lips, they trembled. Behind them, whispers started growing. Guests pulling out their phones, news already spreading. The powerful man, exposed, and still no apology, no explanation, just that same cold stare, until finally he spoke. I did what had to be done, he said. Do you know who that man really is? Amara didn't flinch. She had seen this tactic before. Change the subject, create doubt, deflect blame, but Nathaniel wasn't the villain, and now people were starting to see who truly was. Outside, the groom wasn't gone. He was testing the handkerchief, and within minutes it was confirmed. Poison, colorless, odorless, lethal, enough to cause paralysis in seconds, death in minutes, delivered through the skin, just enough to never leave a trace if no one questioned it. Nathaniel's jaw clenched as he held the results. He could have died in front of hundreds, on the day meant to change his life. He turned to his security chief. Bring him out, he said, alive. The chapel doors burst open again, and this time it wasn't for music, it was for justice. Two men in black suits entered, straight toward the man who once held the room with pride. Amara's father, now exposed, now alone, but even as they approached him, he smirked. You think you've won? He whispered to Amara. You think you understand anything? She didn't answer, because she didn't need to. Truth doesn't beg, truth doesn't scream, it stands, and Amara stood taller than ever before. As her father was taken away, the weight in the room finally lifted. Guests began to whisper words of support. Others quietly left, afraid of what they might have been part of. But one person stayed behind, Celeste, still in her dress, still in disbelief. Her whole world just fell apart, and it was her little sister who tore it open. Amara sat beside her. She didn't speak, because in that moment no words were big enough, until Celeste finally said, "Thank you for saving him." Amara looked at her sister. I didn't just save him, she said. I saved you too, because if that handkerchief had done its job, Celeste wouldn't have just lost a groom, she would have inherited a legacy of death. One built on silence, one built on fear. One that Amara refused to carry any longer. And now, for the first time, she felt free, but just as the dust seemed to settle, a voice from the back of the church echoed, "You're not safe yet." It was an older woman, someone Amara didn't recognize. But she was holding a letter. I worked for your father, she said, for 15 years, and I kept this in case something like today ever happened. She walked slowly to the front, placed the letter in Amara's hand. It's everything he planned, every name, every deal, every threat. Amara opened the envelope. Inside, pages and pages of evidence, contracts, payoffs, surveillance images, and one name circled in red ink: hers. Amara, her father had planned for every possibility, even in case she got in the way. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. The handkerchief was just the beginning. The real story was still hiding. In the shadows her father left behind, Amara stood frozen, the letter trembling in her hand, each word feeling like it carried the weight of 1,000 secrets. Her name circled in red, as if her father had known she'd be the only one brave enough to stop him. And prepared for it. This wasn't just betrayal. This was premeditated, planned, tracked, targeted. He hadn't just poisoned the handkerchief. He had poisoned the legacy, the family, the very idea of what it meant to be safe. And now, with every page she flipped, more darkness spilled into the light. He had connections in law enforcement, in politics, in business, and yes, even in Nathaniel's own corporate circle. This wasn't just about one wedding. It was about taking control of a man too powerful to own, and punishing a daughter too fearless to fold. Amara looked at Celeste. Her sister's face had turned pale, not because she doubted what was on the page, but because she had ignored the signs all her life. They both had the late night meetings, the offshore trips, the envelopes he never explained. It had all been leading to this, but now the paper trail was in their hands, and what they did next would decide who paid the price. Outside the church, Nathaniel West waited not as a groom, but as a man who had seen death too closely to ever see life the same way again. When Amara stepped out and handed him the letter, he didn't say a word. He didn't have to. She had already done what no one else ever dared. She saved his life, and now she was about to save many more. They drove together straight to his private security headquarters. No media, no press, just a sealed file and a team of people who had one job: uncover the truth. And within hours, everything fell into place. Wire transfers from shell companies, bribes to contractors, voice recordings, all connecting her father to a much wider operation than anyone imagined. And at the center of it, that wedding. Because if Nathaniel had died that day, her father would have seized control of properties, patents, and political influence, all legally, all quietly. The marriage was a trap, a beautiful ceremony built on deadly intentions. But now it was over, and Amara had done what no one thought possible. She broke the pattern. She broke the silence. She broke the man who thought he could never be caught. That night, Nathaniel held a press conference, not to defend himself, but to defend her. Standing beside him, Amara wore no makeup, no dress, just truth. He looked into the cameras and said, "Today, I stand because someone else chose to speak when others wouldn't. I owe my life to a 17-year-old girl who saw what no one else could see and had the courage to scream before it was too late. The world listened." Social media exploded. News outlets ran headlines not about betrayal, but about bravery. She saved a tycoon's life with one scream. The handkerchief that almost killed a billionaire. Meet Amara, the girl who changed everything. Overnight, her name became a symbol of resistance, of courage, of light in a world where silence often wins. But Amara didn't care about fame. She didn't care about interviews or awards. She only cared that the truth came out, and it did. In every courtroom, in every file, in every whispered conversation finally exposed to daylight. Her father was arrested, charged with attempted murder, conspiracy, corporate espionage, and more. But the pain didn't vanish with the handcuffs. Because beneath the headlines was still a daughter, still a sister, still a girl who once just wanted her father's love. Amara stood by the courthouse steps the day he was sentenced, and even then, he never looked at her, not once. Not even as he was taken away for the rest of his life. But that's the thing about some fathers: they think power is louder than love. And by the time they realize it isn't, it's already too late. Months passed. The wedding venue was sold, the dress was packed away, and the headlines moved on, but something inside Amara stayed lit. She started speaking at schools, to girls who felt small, to kids told to stay silent. She told them sometimes the most dangerous thing in the room isn't the poison, it's the person holding it, smiling like family. And every time she spoke, a room full of quiet hearts started to beat a little louder. Celeste started a foundation for survivors of betrayal. Nathaniel partnered with her. Together, they turned pain into power and silence into change. And as for Amara, she kept that handkerchief, framed it, hung it on her bedroom wall, not as a memory of fear, but as a reminder. One voice, just one, can change everything. Amara didn't ask for this moment. She never wanted to become a headline. She never planned to expose the man who raised her, but sometimes, life doesn't give you a choice, it gives you a voice, and then it watches what you do with it. She could have stayed silent. She could have swallowed the doubt. Let the music play, let the wedding unfold, and watched another soul be buried in a legacy of lies. But she didn't. She chose to scream. She chose to stand. She chose to save a man she barely knew because deep down, she understood something the rest of the world often forgets. Evil doesn't always wear a mask. Sometimes it wears a smile. Sometimes it sits at your dinner table. Sometimes it shares your last name. And when you see it, when you feel it, when your gut twists and your hands shake, you have a choice. Do you protect the illusion, or do you protect the truth? Amara chose truth, and in doing so, she saved a life. She saved her sister. She saved herself. But more than that, she lit a fire for others who had felt powerless. Girls who never felt heard. Children who were told, respect comes before your instincts. People who knew something was wrong, but were too afraid to speak to them. She became more than a story. She became a mirror. Proof that you don't need age, money, or power to make a difference. You just need courage. Today, Amara walks through life not as a victim, but as a survivor, as a warrior, as a symbol of what happens when the truth refuses to die quietly. And that handkerchief, that one small piece of cloth that nearly ended it all, it now hangs above her desk, not to remember the fear, but to honor the moment she refused to let fear win. Because in a world full of noise, one voice, one scream can still save a life. So if you're watching this, if you've ever felt that whisper in your heart, that gut feeling that something isn't right, don't wait, don't second, guess, don't let fear talk you into silence. You don't need permission to protect what's right. You don't need a crowd to stand for what matters. You just need your voice and the courage to use it. Because somewhere out there someone's life might depend on it. Just like his did, just like hers did. Just like yours might one day, and when that day comes, be like Amara, speak, stand, save.